Hello, my name is Ike, and if you don't know me, well, we're working on it, aren't we? I'm just kind of giving you a quick how-to and how I set up all of my self-tapes, and how I'm going to get ready for self-taping a few things tonight with a dear friend of mine. Actually, somebody I just met who's going to be helping me here in Atlanta as I start my new life here. So just basically, so you know what's going on here, I have my very basic stuff, which is a nice tripod. Luckily it has a hook for the tripod bag and my camera case, as well as an adapter here for connecting the camera, which is charging currently, which I'll show you how to set that up. I have these three LED lights, because LED is much more important to me than anything fluorescent. They don't get hot. You can touch these. This one's been on for roughly 10 minutes, and it's not an issue. You can set these up at different points in the room, whatever you need to do for it. But you can find the best way to go about doing this for your own needs. I like to do one uplight right here, because when you're up here, you start getting shadows if you don't have a secondary light. Like you can see the shadow over here and the different extremes of shadows as we go along. That's the reason why we use multiple lights. So I have one over here to kind of get this portion of me. This is all that's going to be seen in this self-tape. It's going to be from let's say it's roughly your nipples up to your head, and that's all we really want for self-tapes, because the rest of the body doesn't really matter. So if you really want to do self-tapes relaxed, you can do them in sweatpants. I've done it before. I've done it for auditions, and I booked those auditions and no one even knows I'm wearing sweatpants, which is kind of the fun part of it all. But that's a good way to get that stuff going. I use 3 lights, probably will get more, and you can get different like diffusers and whatever things you want. You'll notice the shadows are kind of sharp, but not nearly as much as they could be. I can change the frequency of which these lights go on. So this one's on 52, I can turn it all the way up to 100 if I want. But since it's my uplight, I don't need it to be as striking as these two. These two I have roughly in the 70s. This one, yeah, 76 or so. When you're trying to get a clear image, you're going to make sure that there is no reflection on the forehead, which is kind of funny for me now that I'm bald, but luckily I have a little bit of a matte finish, you know what I mean? So I don't have much of a shiny, but to kind of reduce that, you can use anything from nice makeup powder or whatever. For filming locations, right now I happen to have an empty spot in my apartment because my roommate Dan has not moved in yet, so we have his entire bedroom. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate you. And a nice blank wall. So what you want to do when you're doing a self-tape is make sure you're not wearing the same color. I might not be wearing this because it doesn't fit the character. I have to be both a bouncer and an escapee in a sci-fi-esque world for 2 of them, and then another one. It's called Catch. I haven't quite looked at enough just yet, but I'm going to go ahead and pick out those sides. Unfortunately, my printer didn't make it through the move very well, so I'm working on fixing it up and getting it ready to go. So instead of using paper, I'm going to be smart and use my iPad, which is currently charging as well, to read all these sides with, which will make things way easier. So I'm going to see what the camera's at, so you chill out for a second while I go and check on this. All right, 59%, it's not bad. So I use a Sony Alpha 6000, which is a pretty decent quality camera. If you like Sonys, you'll really like this one. Right now I still have the kit lens on here, which is a 16 to 50 millimeter. I also have a 30 millimeter one that I just bought, but since these are a different type of camera, it's a mirrorless, which means it's a lot smaller and a lot easier to use than a DSLR. If you don't know the difference, look it up, DSLR and mirrorless. These are better for, I would say, photos rather than just strictly video, but they're really good for high quality, which is the only reason I went with mirrorless instead of a DSLR, plus cost. They are beneficial for the cost. So I wish I could show you, and I might bring you over here just so you can kind of see it here in a second, how this sits. Luckily my tripod has a balance thing into it. This is a nice tripod. I got it from Walmart. Don't support it, but you know, if you're on a strict budget like I am, you gotta figure stuff out the best way. I've had this one for roughly a year and some change, maybe, when I started doing self-tapes more often, which is nice. Luckily, I will be able to tell if the camera's balanced as well. If I need to shift anything over, I can. Fortunately, this is fairly even. I'm trying to get this to do what it needs to do. Sometimes it auto shuts off, which is like a product of whatever. I'm going to turn this light up a little bit over here as I kind of get closer. One thing that I can do as I get going is I'm going to set a marker for the self-tape itself, so that I can always hit this spot. So for my purposes, I'm going to use the bag here that I have, which this bag also has what I almost just dropped, is a $100 Sony mic used to attach to it, which is pretty nice and nifty. It comes with a little dead cat, if you will, to kind of block or buffer sound, and it also has a nice vertical scope there if you need it to have widespread sound, but since it's just me, I'm going to use these for two. Not that the camera mic isn't good enough, but this is better. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back off for a second and take off this protector and plug this bad boy in and give it a go. And lock this bad boy up as well. That way there's no chance of it falling off. The cool thing about this is, since it is a part of the Sony brand, it's automatically connected and I don't have to work to connect it wirelessly or anything like that, because this camera itself doesn't have an aux port, which is something to think through. When you're buying cameras, be smart about it. Just take the time to look it over. I'm using a GoPro 7 Black to film this live, which is really cool too. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and move this over a little bit, and I usually move this into about 30 millimeters because that tends to be one of the better ones. So you ask, why wouldn't I just switch over to my 30 millimeter lens? It's because this one has an autofocus feature that the other one is a manual focus, and because I'm training someone how to self-tape me, it might not be as good if he doesn't know his cameras. So this is a way to optimize your time and everyone else's time involved. I'm going to go ahead and just switch this to picture mode for a second so I can get a picture of what it looks like. I'm going to turn on the timer as well so that I know what I'm doing here, which is kind of nice. I swear I do know what I'm doing, right? All right, do a 10-second timer and just take a practice one here. It's beeping, so I know, and I can kind of just see exactly where it's at and see if my marker is good enough for the camera itself. You can be cheesy, whatever you want to do. I tend to look frightened because I never actually know what I'm doing. And of course I moved the marker, which is fine. I'm pretty good at this. I've been doing it for a while. So I can go here to the playback and see that it is in fact not where I want it to be. So instead, I will go ahead and move it in just a little bit more, and probably even move this up a little bit. If this is giving me any trouble, I can go ahead and set this bad boy back here, just so that I'm making sure that I have the right kind of display and shit on here. Pardon my French. I'm going to go ahead and do another one, just in case. Move it back out to like 33, which tends to be a good one. I was a little off center. For these cameras, you kind of want to set a little bit more to where the flash is itself. The flashing red light, if you will, for the timer. Go ahead and move this over a bit too. And let's see what that's looking like. That is much better for a self-focus. Well, I need to find out why it's not focused in too well here. It could just be my imagination, but it doesn't look like it's as focused as it should be. Once you kind of figure out how your timer or how your camera works, you can start to play around with the settings, which I like to mess around with them as much as I can. Just make sure that it's on auto, which I think was the issue there. I had accidentally taken it off auto, which happens because I was using the other lens before, which changes things and how you work. As much as I know about cameras, I also don't know enough, as much as other people who went to school for it. I went to school for musical theater, which means I'm incredibly adept at singing, acting, and I'm a really good mover. That's much closer. It's about right where I want it to be, which is good. I'm going to do an audio test of this actually while I'm messing with it, see how this new audio works, because I have not messed with this with sides much. I've pretty much just used it for filming random, or for filming my podcast series. So if I'm here just kind of talking and orating, and if I want to get a little bit louder, I can be a little bit louder. If I want to be a little bit softer and kind of see how it picks up that audio too. If I decide that I don't like this audio, I can do a different form of audio entirely if this one's not working as well as I would like it to. But that's an audio test, and we're going to go ahead and give it a listen. And I don't know if you'll hear it all the way over there, but I might as well just bring it over here. Fortunately, it is in focus. You can get a good little look at that there, and it looks pretty good. You can see kind of how the framing works. Luckily, with a wide-angle lens, it's not too bad. I'll go ahead and take you back so you can see all of it really quickly. The camera audio you get from it is really hard to hear, and it's kind of scratchy because the audio is so good coming from this. Here's that for you once more. Once I kind of come into frame here, you can see that a lot of the shadows in the back are a lot less noticeable when you're looking at how even the lighting is on my skin and tone, which is kind of what you want for it. Eventually, I'm going to be getting some fabric backgrounds, which are a lot easier to manage shadows with. But for now, that has not happened. So I'm going to go ahead and charge this up a little bit more until we get the until I get my little guest of honor here. But for now, that's about all you need to know about setting up. These all tear down very easily. It's a lot of little screwing and latching and moving stuff into place. You can move them around really easily. They're all very lightweight. I mean, the heaviest part is the instrument itself, obviously. I would invest in lights if you want to self-produce like I do. It's a good way to kind of like focus in on you and make sure that, you know, this room itself has no lights on. The light that is illuminating in here is just from these. The only thing that's important is right in front of it, and that's you. So thank you for tuning in for a little bit, and I'll probably have some more updates as we go along